Welcome to Competitive Cards and Comics. This is Tales from the Short Box, and this is Amazing Spider-Man 296. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Competitive Cards and Comics, and this is the first episode of Tales from the Short Box. Now, a little backstory here. A couple years ago, my parents brought a bunch of boxes that I had left in the rafters of their attic from when I moved out as a kid, as a 18-year-old who thought he knew everything. I went through them, and in 2019, I started going through them. I found a bunch of my old sports cards, got really back into collecting sports cards, did some sports card stuff on YouTube, kind of got out of it at the beginning of the year for a multitude of reasons. And then was kind of bored toward the end of the year, wasn't working, been off now because of the pandemic, and just looking for stuff to keep me occupied and keep my 9-year-old son occupied. And I decided, oh wait, I have some comic books. I went through my old things, found a bunch of my old comic books. They were not in the best shape. They were all over the place. But I collected comic books from the late 80s into the mid 90s. And as it got closer to the mid 90s, I started to actually get away from cards and more into comic books, especially I would say from the years 93 to like 95-ish, 96. I probably stopped around 96. But so I decided, I went through them all. I bagged them, boarded them, and I had stacked two big stacks. Most of them were not in the best shape, but salvageable. And they just happened to pretty much fill this short box to the brim. So I decided that I'm going to go through all of my old comic books from that period and reread them, look at them, talk about how they made me feel and what was going on, and the nostalgic aspect of it. We'll discuss that. And I'm going to start here. May seem random, but with this issue of Amazing Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man is my favorite, one of my favorites of all time. It's right up there. And number 296. This is the oldest comic book in my collection from when I was a kid. Later on I bought older comic books and things like that, but as this was the first one that I have still that really kind of got me into collecting, and we'll talk about that story in a little bit. But let's get into this issue of Amazing Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man 296. Here we have the cover. As you can see, it involves Dr. Octopus trapped in a spider's web being attacked by a giant spider that looks like Spider-Man in his old costume, the red and blue costume. He is still wearing the black costume in this issue, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But so Dr. Octopus is in this. We haven't seen Dr. Octopus in a while because he went crazy during his feud with Spider-Man drove him insane. This issue is written by Dave Michelini, who had a long and storied run on Amazing Spider-Man, where he would help create Venom, amongst other key issues. And he also did a legendary run on Iron Man as well. Dave Saviuk is the artist in this book. I didn't know much about him, but it turns out he's had a very long career as a comic book artist too. Started in DC, came over to Marvel. He did 3 issues around this time of Amazing Spider-Man, including this one. He had a long run on Web of Spider-Man, and eventually even had a longer run on the Amazing Spider-Man newspaper comic strip that surprisingly lasted until 2019. So the art's good. It's good. It's not as exaggerated as like Todd McFarlane or Rob Liefeld or some of the other guys that come after this. It's very kind of toned down. It's like classic 80s Marvel comic book art, 9-panel, traditional, but it's good. So in this book, Spider-Man he starts off walking, actually, in the rain, and he's run out of web fluid in his web shooters. He has to get home, and that starts kind of a side story of him wanting to create or update his web shooters for various reasons, so he doesn't run out, wants to make them out of plastic so he doesn't trip metal detectors. So of course that comes into play later as a way for him to have to sell photos because it's expensive to build these things. The main story though is Dr. Charles Jefferson is running experiments on his newest patient, who happens to be Dr. Octopus. He's been separated from his arms. And Dr. Octopus has been driven insane by his battles with Spider-Man. He has these really crazy dream sequences where he's being attacked by Spider-Man, or there's a lot of Spider-Man, or we see him in the spider's web being attacked by a big spider. Although in this picture, it is a big spider and not a spider that looks like Spider-Man's costume. Dr. Octopus's arms sense that he's in distress. They break free. Spider-Man, they end up back with Dr. Octopus. Spider-Man confronts them, and traditional comic battle. They battle. Dr. Octopus ends up getting away. Spider-Man breaks some pipes, burns and the steam burns Dr. Octopus, and it forces them to flee, but it also causes kind of a smoke screen, and he doesn't get to see them, and they flee. And now Dr. Octopus, at the end of this, has a plan to finally destroy Spider-Man, and that's pretty much it. It's to be continued after that, and just your normal, regular, everyday Spider-Man story, except it was to be continued in issue number 297. Which really, as a kid, made me mad. But we'll talk about that now as we talk about my actual issue and what it means to me. So my issue of Amazing Spider-Man 296 is right here. As you can see, it's not in the best shape. I'm going to try to get, there we go, see, back corner. I don't know if you can see, I'm trying to get the light on it right where you can see there's a lot of like little dings and dents in the cover. The pages inside are not in the best shape. Like I said, I've had this since I was 9 years old. This came out, this was the January 1988 issue. So I believe this came out in, like they were a month behind. So I believe this came out in December of 87. I could be mistaken. It could be January 88. So I thought I got this for Christmas of 87. If not, then that means that I got this for my birthday in 88, where I turned 10 in February. But this issue was given to me by my grandparents, and it's, as you can see, it's got this UPC, so it's a newsstand edition. The funny thing is, about this is that, so this was given to me by my grandparents. My grandparents came to visit us. I thought it was for Christmas. It could have been for my birthday. And they made a last-second stop. They had some gifts. They made a last-second stop and picked up a couple extra things. I don't know if anybody remembers the old school smoke shops, or if they even had those in your area, wherever you live as a kid. But, when I was a kid, there was a thing called these smoke shops, and they were just little stores where you bought tobacco products, but it was more like cigars and pipes and pipe tobacco. They had a really like distinctive smell. It smelled great, but and every single one that I was ever in, there was one of those tall spinning racks full of comic books. And my grandfather smoked cigars and occasionally pipe tobacco, and I believe they're on the way to the house, and they stopped at the one smoke shop in my neighborhood that was on the border of Orange and South Orange, New Jersey. Orange and West Orange, New Jersey. If you know it now, it's the shopping center where the CVS is, or was. I haven't been there in a long time. And, you know, as a kid, I don't know when they did away. I know probably sometime in the 90s, but I mean, we used to be able to go in there without a parent and buy comic books. You know, they had comic books there. Eventually, I think you had to have a parent with you. But yeah, this is they stopped. They got this. They picked this up for me, and I remember being kind of pissed off because I was into G.I. Joes at the time, and they got a G.I. Joe comic for my stepbrother. But this turned out to be better. And the funny thing about this, somehow, through all my travels in life and growing up, I moved around a lot as a kid. This stayed with me, and it's just years later when I had no idea about like Venom was coming or anything in this. It's just a Spider-Man comic book. It was kind of an afterthought, and then you know, I think the only time I read it was when I got punished and I got sent to my room by my mom, and I had nothing to do, so I just read a book. Like, we didn't have TVs in our bedrooms back then. What else? Oh, yeah. So, like, the black costume, he's still wearing the black costume. I had no idea this was going to become Venom. And I was kind of torn on this because, like, I know the black costume, he's in the black costume. They used the red costume here. And I only knew about the costume change because a few years earlier during Secret Wars, I was probably, like, five or six. I loved those Secret Wars toys, and I remember I had like Captain America and Doctor Doom and a couple other ones, but I didn't have Spider-Man. And then my mom finally got me Spider-Man, and I believe it was the black. I don't remember if I got the black Spider-Man. I was pissed because I wanted the red and blue one, or I got the red and blue one, but I wanted the black one. It was something like that. And but I do remember like not being happy with the black costume at first, and then eventually it growing on me and kind of being like, all right, this black costume is cool. And then being pissed that they went and got rid of the black costume. And from what I've read, that happened with this a lot, is that like the Marvel introduced the black costume, people hated it. So they came up with the alien story to phase it out, because that story really comes along before Venom. It's like 259, 260, something like that. To get him back into the red costume, and then it turned out that the black costume actually grown on people and they did like it, so there was kind of like this back and forth, and eventually he goes back to the red costume for good when McFarlane takes over, because McFarlane did not like the black costume, did not want to draw it, so they created Venom. Years later, when I realized when I got kind of into collecting, which was about end of 89, beginning of 1990, like after the Batman movie, and I realized about Venom, I was like, oh, I think I have one of those issues, and it turns out I didn't. It was just before it, but still, it's a good comic book. I was really pissed off as a kid that this thing had to be continued in the next issue, so I was like, all right, well, they were still 75 cents at the time, so I'm like, well, it's only 75 cents, I'll buy the next issue and finish the story. And that we'll discuss in our next episode. Once again, this is Amazing Spider-Man 296. Come back for our next episode when we talk about Amazing Spider-Man 297. Thanks for watching, everybody. Tales from the Short Box. Peace.